Every day you're in conversations that shape your future, job interviews, negotiations, arguments, first impressions. The truth is, if you don't learn to lead the dialogue, someone else will. But here's the secret. The most persuasive people aren't aggressive, they're intentional. They guide conversations by asking the right questions, reading the room, and staying calm under pressure. This is not manipulation, it's mastery. Subscribe to our channel if you're ready to master your mind and tell us, where are you watching from? Let me tell you something that most people never realize. Every single day, you're engaged in a dance of influence. But here's what separates the masters from the masses. Most people are just making noise, while a select few are conducting symphonies. Think about your last important conversation. Maybe it was with your boss, your spouse, or a potential client. Did you feel in control, or did you walk away feeling like you missed an opportunity? The truth is, most people enter conversations like they're entering a lottery, hoping for the best but expecting nothing. But what if I told you that every conversation follows patterns? Patterns so predictable that once you understand them, you'll never feel powerless in a dialogue again. This isn't about manipulation, it's about mastery. It's about understanding the invisible forces that shape every human interaction. You. See, when two people engage in conversation, there's always a leader and a follower. Even in the most casual exchanges, someone is setting the pace, someone is steering the ship. And if you're not consciously taking the helm, I guarantee someone else is. Let me share something I've observed over decades of studying human behavior. The person who controls the conversation controls the outcome. But here's where most people get it wrong. They think control means domination. They think it means talking more, being louder, or forcing their point of view. Nothing could be further from the truth. Real conversational control is subtle. It's like a current beneath the surface of a calm sea. You don't see it, but it's moving everything in its desired direction. The masters of conversation don't announce their presence. They create an environment where others naturally follow their lead. Consider this. Have you ever been in the presence of someone who seemed to command attention without raising their voice? Someone who could shift the energy of a room with just a few well-chosen words? That's not accident or natural charisma. It's skill, a skill that you can learn. The first principle you must understand is the difference between passive talking and intentional dialogue. Passive talking is what most people do. They react, they ramble, they fill silence with noise. Intentional dialogue, on the other hand, is strategic. Every word serves a purpose. Every question moves the conversation forward. I've seen countless brilliant people fail to achieve their goals simply because they never learned to lead conversations. They had the knowledge, the credentials, the experience, but they couldn't package it in a way that influenced others. They were playing checkers while their competitors were playing chess. But here's what gives me hope. This skill can be learned. I've taught it to thousands of people from all walks of life. I've seen shy introverts become master communicators. I've watched struggling salespeople transform into top performers. The common denominator? They all learned to see conversation for what it really is, a tool of influence. As we continue this journey together, I'm going to show you exactly how to develop this power. You'll learn to read people like open books, to guide conversations with invisible hands, and to create change through words alone. Remember this, every great achievement in human history started with a conversation. Someone had to convince others to believe, to act, to follow. That someone could be you. But first, you need to master the invisible power that shapes every human interaction. Are you ready to take control of your conversations? Are you ready to stop being a passenger and become a pilot? The journey starts now. 7 seconds. That's all you have. In those precious moments, someone will decide whether to trust you, listen to you, or dismiss you entirely. I've spent years studying these crucial first moments of human interaction, and what I'm about to share with you will transform how you approach every new encounter. Here's what most people don't understand. First impressions aren't made, they're crafted. Every element, from your handshake to your first words, is a brushstroke in a larger portrait. And like any masterpiece, it requires both technique and artistry. Let's start with the foundation, your entrance. When you enter a room, do you slip in like a shadow, or do you enter with purpose? The masters of first impressions understand that your physical presence sets the tone before you speak a single word. They move with deliberate grace, not too fast, not too slow. They occupy space with quiet confidence. Now, let's talk about the handshake, that ancient ritual that still carries immense psychological weight. A handshake isn't just a greeting, it's a conversation without words. Too firm, and you signal aggression. Too loose, and you communicate weakness. The perfect handshake is firm but warm, accompanied by direct eye contact and a genuine smile that reaches your eyes. But here's where most people make their first critical mistake. They rush to fill the silence. They babble nervously, throwing away their power in a flood of unnecessary words. Remember this: the first moments of any interaction are like a dance, and sometimes the most powerful move is a pause. When you meet someone new, give them your full attention. Make them feel for that moment that they are the most important person in the room. This isn't manipulation, it's genuine human connection. And it's a skill that will set you apart in a world of distracted, half-present people. Your voice is another crucial instrument in this orchestra of impression. The pitch, pace, and tone of your first words will either command attention or squander it. Speak from your diaphragm, not your throat. Let your voice carry authority without aggression. Most importantly, learn to modulate your tone to match the energy of the room while maintaining your presence. Here's a secret that few understand. The most powerful first impressions often come from what you don't do. You don't fidget. You don't ramble. You don't try to prove yourself. Instead, you carry yourself with quiet confidence, knowing that your presence speaks louder than words. I've watched countless professionals lose opportunities in those first 7 seconds. The brilliant engineer who couldn't look people in the eye, the talented executive who rushed her words, the natural leader who undermined his presence with nervous laughter. But I've also seen these same people transform their impact once they understood the science of first impressions. Let me share a technique I teach to executives and leaders, the power pose. Before any important interaction, take a moment in private to stand tall, shoulders back, head high. Hold this pose for 2 minutes. This isn't just positive thinking, it's biochemistry. Research shows this simple practice increases testosterone and decreases cortisol, literally changing your body chemistry to enhance your presence. But perhaps the most crucial element of a powerful first impression is authenticity. People can sense fake confidence, like sharks smell blood in water. The goal isn't to create a false persona. It's to present your best, most authentic self in those crucial first moments. Think of it this way. You're not trying to be someone else. You're being the highest version of yourself, the version that knows their value, the version that can lead conversations and influence outcomes, the version that makes others feel heard, valued, and understood. Remember, every relationship, every opportunity, every success story begins with these 7 seconds. Master them, and you master the art of human connection. Fail to understand their importance, and you'll forever wonder why doors seem to close before you even reach them. Are you ready to transform how the world sees you in those crucial first moments? Are you prepared to command attention without saying a word? The power to shape perceptions is in your hands. Use it wisely. Here's a paradox that most people never grasp. The most powerful person in any conversation is often the one saying the least. This flies in the face of everything we think we know about influence and control. We've been conditioned to believe. That power comes from speaking, from making our voice heard, from dominating the dialogue. But let me tell you something I've learned from decades of studying human behavior. True conversational control begins with masterful listening. Think about the last time you felt truly heard. Not just heard, but understood at a deep level. How did it make you feel about the person listening? Did you find yourself opening up more, trusting them, wanting their opinion? That's not coincidence, it's psychology at work. You see, most people don't listen, they wait to talk. They're so busy formulating their next response that they miss the subtle signals, the hidden meanings, the opportunities for deeper connection. They're like chess players who only look one move ahead, missing the strategy that could win the game. Let me share something profound. Silence is not empty. It's full of answers. When you learn to embrace silence, to use it as a tool rather than fear it as a void, you gain an almost supernatural ability to understand people. In that silence, people reveal themselves. Their true thoughts emerge. Their real concerns surface. But here's where mastery comes in. Strategic listening isn't passive. It's an active, engaged process that requires more skill than speaking. When you listen strategically, you're gathering intelligence, you're building trust, you're creating leverage. I've watched countless negotiations transform when one party finally learned to truly listen. I've seen bitter arguments dissolve when someone simply stopped defending and started hearing. The power of genuine listening is almost magical in its ability to disarm resistance and create connection. Here's a technique I teach to executives and diplomats: the 3 levels of listening. Level 1 is surface listening, hearing the words, but missing the music. Level 2 is interpretive listening, understanding not just what's said, but what's meant. Level 3 is holistic listening, absorbing everything from tone to body language to what's not being said. Most people never get past level 1. They hear words but miss meanings. They catch complaints but miss cries for help. They register disagreement but miss opportunities for alignment. But when you master all 3 levels, you become almost clairvoyant in your ability to understand others. Let me give you a practical tool: the power of the purposeful pause. After someone finishes speaking, count to 3 in your head before responding. This simple technique accomplishes 3 things. It ensures they're truly finished, it shows you're considering their words, and it gives you time to formulate a thoughtful response. But here's what most people don't understand about listening. It's not just about understanding, it's about making others feel understood. When someone feels truly heard, they become more open to your influence. They lower their defenses. They begin to trust your judgment. I've seen this principle transform even the most hostile situations. Picture this: 2 executives locked in a bitter disagreement, neither willing to budge. Then one of them, trained in these principles, simply starts listening, really listening, not to respond, not to defend, but to understand. Within minutes, the entire dynamic shifts. Remember this: people will fight to be right, but they'll open up to be understood. When you master the art of strategic listening, you gain the ability to guide conversations without force. You create an environment where others naturally want to follow your lead. Here's another powerful truth: listening creates debt. When you give someone your complete, undivided attention, they feel almost obligated to return the favor. This isn't manipulation, it's human nature. We reciprocate attention just as we reciprocate kindness. But perhaps the most powerful aspect of masterful listening is what it does to your own mind. When you truly listen, you gain insights that speaking could never reveal. You see opportunities that others miss. You understand motivations that others overlook. As we continue this journey together, remember, control in conversation isn't about dominating the dialogue. It's about understanding it completely. It's about creating an environment where others feel heard, understood, and valued. In that environment, influence becomes natural, resistance melts away, and true leadership emerges. Are you ready to become the kind of listener that people trust with their deepest thoughts? Are you prepared to wield the quiet power that comes from truly understanding others? The path to conversational mastery begins with closing your mouth and opening your mind. Let me share with you one of the most powerful truths I've discovered. In my years of studying human behavior, the person with the most emotional control in any interaction is the person with the most influence. This isn't just a theory. It's a law of human nature as reliable as gravity. Think about the last time you lost your emotional composure in an important conversation. Maybe someone pushed your buttons, challenged your authority, or questioned your integrity. How did that loss of control affect your ability to influence the situation? More importantly, how did it affect others' perception of your leadership? Here's what most people don't understand. Emotional reactivity is the death of influence. The moment you lose your composure, you lose your power. It doesn't matter how right you are, how justified your anger might be, or how provocative the other person is being. When you react emotionally, you hand over control of the conversation and often the outcome. But let me be clear. Emotional control doesn't mean emotional suppression. It's not about becoming a robot or hiding your feelings. It's about maintaining your center even when others lose theirs. It's about responding rather than reacting. I've watched countless negotiations fall apart because someone couldn't maintain their emotional equilibrium. I've seen brilliant careers derailed by moments of unchecked anger. But I've also seen people transform their professional lives by mastering this one crucial skill. Here's the framework I teach to leaders and negotiators: the 3 circles of emotional control. The outer circle is your awareness, your ability to recognize when your emotions are being triggered. The middle circle is your choice, your capacity to pause between stimulus and response. The inner circle is your response, your power to choose how you express yourself. Most people live entirely in the outer circle. They're aware of their emotions, but they're slaves to them. They feel anger rising and they let it explode. They sense fear and they let it paralyze them. They experience frustration and they let it control their actions. But here's where mastery comes in. Emotional control is a skill that can be developed. Just like building a muscle, you can strengthen your ability to maintain composure under pressure. The key is understanding that between every trigger and every response lies a space. In that space lies your power. Let me share a technique that's transformed countless lives: the emotional reset button. When you feel yourself losing control, take a deep breath and imagine pressing a reset button in your mind. This simple act creates a moment of clarity, a pause between stimulus and response. In that pause, you reclaim your power, but perhaps the most powerful aspect of emotional control is what it communicates to others. When you maintain your composure while others lose theirs, you demonstrate leadership. When you stay calm in the face of provocation, you command respect. When you respond thoughtfully rather than react emotionally, you build trust. Here is another truth that few understand. Emotional control is contagious. When you maintain your composure, you create a space for others to find theirs. Your calmness becomes a center of gravity that pulls others toward equilibrium. I've seen this principle transform even the most hostile situations. Picture a heated boardroom argument. Tensions are high, voices are raised. Then one person, trained in these principles, maintains absolute composure. They speak softly but firmly. They respond rather than react. Watch how quickly the energy shifts. Remember this: in any high-stakes situation, the person with the most emotional control becomes the de facto leader. People naturally look to the calmest person in the room for guidance. They instinctively trust those who can maintain their center when others are losing theirs. Let me give you another practical tool: the power pause. When you feel emotional, pressure building, pause for 3 seconds. In those 3 seconds, ask yourself, what would my wisest self do in this situation? This simple practice can prevent countless regrettable moments and maintain your influence. But here's what's crucial to understand. Emotional control isn't about winning arguments. It's about achieving outcomes. When you maintain your composure, you keep your focus on your objectives rather than getting caught up in emotional warfare. As we continue this journey together, remember, your emotional state is your responsibility. No one can make you lose your composure without your permission. No situation can force you to react without your consent. You always have the power to choose your response. Are you ready to become the calm center in every storm? Are you prepared to develop the kind of emotional control that commands instant respect? The path to true influence begins with mastering your own emotional state. There's a hidden language being spoken in every conversation, a language more powerful than words. It's the language of synchronicity, of subtle mimicry, of unconscious connection. Masters of influence understand this language fluently, and today I'm going to teach you its secrets. Let me share something remarkable. Humans are naturally wired to like people who are like them. This isn't just psychology, it's biology. Our brains are designed to trust what's familiar and be cautious of what's different. But here's the fascinating part. You can trigger this trust response intentionally through what I call the mirror effect. The mirror effect is not about obvious imitation. It's about creating subtle harmony in your interactions. Think of it like a dance where you're following your partner's lead so smoothly, they don't even realize they're leading. This is the art of building instant rapport through calculated yet natural synchronicity. Here's what most people don't understand. Mirroring happens at 3 levels: physical, vocal, and verbal. Physical mirroring involves subtle matching of posture and gestures. Vocal mirroring matches pace, tone, and energy. Verbal mirroring echoes key phrases and speech patterns. But let me warn you, crude mimicry will backfire spectacularly. The key is subtlety. When someone leans forward, you don't immediately copy them. You gradually shift your posture over the next 30 seconds. When they speak softly, you don't suddenly whisper. You gradually modulate your voice to match their energy. I've watched countless negotiations transform through skilled mirroring. Picture this: a skeptical client, arms crossed, speaking in short, clipped sentences. The skilled communicator gradually adopts a similar posture, matches the client's speech pattern, and within minutes, the barriers begin to dissolve. Here's a technique I teach to sales professionals: the 70% rule. Mirror about 70% of what you observe, enough to create rapport, but not so much that it becomes noticeable. If they're speaking quickly, speak at about 70% of their pace. If they're using hand gestures, use similar ones but with less intensity. But here's where mastery comes in. True mirroring isn't just about copying behaviors, it's about matching energy. Every person has a unique energetic frequency. Some are high energy and animated, others are calm and measured. Your ability to match and gradually modulate this energy is key to building instant rapport. Let me share another powerful tool: value mirroring. This goes beyond behavior to reflect someone's core values and beliefs. When you detect what matters to them, whether it's efficiency, creativity, tradition, or innovation, you can frame your communication to align with these values. Remember this: people trust their mirrors. When they see aspects of themselves reflected in you, they automatically feel more comfortable, more understood, more connected. This isn't manipulation, it's facilitation. You're creating a bridge of familiarity across which trust can travel. I've seen this principle transform even the most difficult relationships. A manager struggling to connect with their team learns to mirror their communication styles. A salesperson having trouble closing deals discovers how to match their client's energy. A leader facing resistance learns to reflect their team's values. But here's what's crucial to understand: mirroring must be authentic. You're not creating a false persona. You're amplifying aspects of yourself that resonate with others. Everyone has multiple facets to their personality. The art is in choosing which facet to present. Let me give you a practical exercise. In your next 3 conversations, consciously notice the other person's pace of speech, energy level, and key phrases. Don't mirror yet. Just observe. This awareness is the foundation of skillful mirroring. The power of this technique lies in its invisibility. When done correctly, people don't realize they're being mirrored. They just feel unusually comfortable with you, unusually understood, unusually connected. They can't explain why. They just know they like you. As we continue this journey together, remember, the goal of mirroring isn't to become someone else. It's to create a comfortable space where genuine connection can occur. It's about building bridges, not wearing masks. It's about making others feel understood, not manipulated. Are you ready to master the subtle art of instant rapport? Are you prepared to speak the silent language of influence? The power to make people like you instantly is within your grasp. Use it wisely, use it ethically, and watch as doors begin to open everywhere you go. Here's a truth that has transformed countless lives. The person asking the questions is the person controlling the conversation. But I'm not talking about just any questions. I'm talking about questions that unlock minds, questions that guide thinking, questions that create breakthroughs. Most people completely misunderstand the power of questions. They think questions are just about gathering information. But master communicators know that questions are actually tools of influence. They're instruments of guidance. They're keys that unlock closed minds. Let me share something profound. When you tell someone something, you create resistance. But when you ask them the right question, you create insight. This is because humans are naturally defensive against being told what to think, but they trust their own discoveries. Think about the last time someone tried to convince you of something by telling you why you were wrong. How did that make you feel? Now, think about a time when someone asked you questions that led you to discover a new perspective on your own. Which approach was more effective? Here's what separates master communicators from average ones. They don't push their ideas. They pull insights out of others through strategic questioning. They understand that the mind is like a parachute. It works best when it's open, and questions are the key to opening minds. Let me introduce you to what I call the Socratic ladder, a framework for asking increasingly powerful questions. You start with fact-based questions to establish common ground. Then you move to perspective questions that explore viewpoints. Finally, you ask insight questions that create breakthroughs. But here's where most people go wrong. They ask closed questions that can be answered with a simple yes or no. These questions dead-end conversations. Master communicators ask open questions that begin with what, how, or why. These questions create dialogue, exploration, and discovery. I've watched countless negotiations transform through the power of strategic questioning. Instead of saying, "This is the best deal you'll get," a skilled negotiator asks, "What would make this deal work for you?" Instead of declaring, "Your approach is wrong," they ask, "How did you arrive at this approach?" Here is another crucial principle. Questions control focus. Whatever you ask about becomes the center of attention. Want someone to focus on solutions instead of problems? Don't tell them to be more positive. Ask them what solutions they've considered. Want them to think about the future instead of the past? Ask about their vision, not their history. Let me share a technique I teach to leaders and coaches, the Power Question Framework. Before any important conversation, prepare 3 types of questions. Opening questions to establish rapport, exploration, questions to understand deeply, and insight questions to create breakthroughs. But here's what's crucial to understand. The power of questions isn't just in asking them. It's in listening deeply to the answers. Each answer is a doorway to another, more powerful question. Each response contains clues about what to ask next. Remember this. Questions are not just about getting answers. They're about creating clarity. Often the value of a question isn't in the answer it produces, but in the thinking it provokes. Sometimes the right question can create more insight than the perfect answer. I've seen this principle transform even the most resistant situations. A manager struggling with a difficult employee stops telling and starts asking. A parent in conflict with a teenager begins asking exploratory questions instead of making demands. A salesperson shifts from pitching to questioning, and their results transform. Here's another powerful truth. Questions can diffuse conflict better than statements. When someone is angry or resistant, asking, "Help me understand what's frustrating you," is far more effective than saying, "Calm down," or "You're overreacting." Let me give you a practical tool, the perspective shift question. When you're stuck in a disagreement, ask, "What would need to be true for this to work?" This question shifts thinking from opposition to possibility, from conflict to collaboration. As we continue this journey together, remember, your questions are your instruments of influence. They're your tools for guiding thoughts, opening minds, and creating insights. The quality of your questions determines the quality of your conversations. Are you ready to master the art of asking powerful questions? Are you prepared to guide conversations through curiosity rather than force? The path to influential communication begins with learning to ask the questions that matter most. Let me share with you one of the most powerful principles I've discovered in my lifetime of studying human behavior, the law of agreement. This principle states that the fastest way to influence someone's thinking is to first agree with them. Not argue, not debate, not resist, agree. Here's what most people don't understand. Agreement is not surrender. It's not about giving up your position or compromising your values. It's about creating a foundation of harmony from which real influence becomes possible. It's about starting with yes before you navigate to and. Think about the last time someone immediately disagreed with your perspective. How did it make you feel? Did you become more open to their ideas? Or did you instinctively defend your position? This is human nature. When we encounter resistance, we resist back. When we meet agreement, we open up. But here's where mastery comes in. The art of agreement isn't about blind acceptance. It's about finding the truth in someone's perspective, no matter how small, and building from there. There's almost always something you can genuinely agree with, even in positions you largely oppose. I've watched countless conflicts transform through this principle. Instead of saying, "You're wrong," skilled communicators say, "I agree that this is frustrating," and instead of "That won't work," they say, "Yes, we need a solution, and let's explore all our options." Let me share a technique I call the agreement bridge. First, find a point of genuine agreement, no matter how small. Second, acknowledge the emotion or intention behind their position. Third, use "and" instead of "but" to add your perspective. This creates a bridge from their thinking to yours. But here's what's crucial to understand. Agreement must be genuine. People can sense insincerity like sharks smell blood in water. Don't agree for tactical advantage. Agree because you've found something true in their perspective. There's almost always something valid in how someone sees a situation. Remember this. Agreement creates psychological safety. When people feel their views are acknowledged and respected, they become more open to considering other perspectives. They stop defending and start exploring. They shift from opposition to collaboration. I've seen this principle transform even the most entrenched conflicts. A manager dealing with a resistant employee starts with, "I agree this situation is frustrating." A salesperson facing objections begins with, "You're right to be concerned about this." A negotiator handling a tough situation opens with, "I completely agree this needs to be resolved." Here's another powerful truth. Agreement doesn't just change others, it changes you. When you look for what you can agree with, you start seeing situations more completely. You develop a more nuanced understanding. You become a better thinker, not just a better communicator. Let me give you a practical tool, the agreement inventory. Before any challenging conversation, list 3 things you can genuinely agree with about the other person's position. This prepares you to build bridges instead of walls. It shifts your mindset from combat to collaboration. But perhaps the most powerful aspect of agreement is what it does to the energy of a conversation. Agreement creates harmony. Harmony creates openness. Openness creates possibility. And in that space of possibility, real change can occur. I've taught this principle to thousands of leaders, negotiators, and communicators. The ones who master it discover something remarkable. Agreement doesn't weaken their position. It strengthens their influence. It doesn't compromise their goals. It creates paths to achieve them. Here's what separates master communicators from average ones. They understand that agreement is not about being nice. It's about being strategic. They know that the fastest way to get someone to consider your perspective is to first honor theirs. Let me share another technique, the agreement pause. When you feel the urge to disagree, pause and ask yourself, what part of this can I agree with? This simple practice can transform your communications from confrontational to collaborative. As we continue this journey together, remember, the law of agreement isn't about avoiding conflict. It's about creating the conditions for resolution. It's not about surrendering your position. It's about building a bridge to understanding. Are you ready to master the art of agreement? Are you prepared to discover how starting with yes can lead you to better outcomes than starting with no? The path to influential communication begins with finding common ground, no matter how small it might seem at first. Let me share with you one of the most overlooked yet powerful tools in human communication, the strategic pause. In a world that rushes to fill every silence, those who master the art of the pause hold extraordinary influence. This isn't just about taking breaks between words. It's about wielding silence as an instrument of power. Here's what most people don't understand. Silence creates space, and in that space, magic happens. Thoughts crystallize, emotions settle, insights emerge. But most people are so uncomfortable with silence that they rush to fill it, throwing away their power in a flood of unnecessary words. Think about the last time you were in a negotiation or important conversation. How comfortable were you with silence? Did you rush to fill every gap? Did you give others time to fully process your words? The mastery of the pause often determines the mastery of the conversation. Let me introduce you to what I call the three powers of the pause: emphasis, invitation, and control. A pause before a key point creates emphasis. A pause after a question creates invitation. A pause during tension creates control. Master communicators understand and wield all three. But here's where the art comes in. Different situations call for different types of pauses. The thoughtful pause shows you're considering someone's words deeply. The power pause creates anticipation for what you'll say next. The reset pause helps regain control of emotional situations. I've watched countless presentations transform through the strategic use of pause. Instead of rushing through important points, skilled speakers pause to let them land. Instead of filling silence after questions, they let the question hang in the air, creating engagement and anticipation. Here's a technique I teach to executives and leaders: the 3-second rule. Before responding to any important statement or a question, pause for 3 seconds. This accomplishes 3 things. It shows respect for what was said, it gives you time to think, and it adds weight to your response. But here's what's crucial to understand. The pause isn't just about silence. It's about presence. When you pause while maintaining eye contact and an engaged expression, you create intensity. When you pause while breaking eye contact and sitting back, you create space for others to step forward. Remember this: the person comfortable with silence is often perceived as the most powerful person in the room. They don't rush. They don't fidget. They don't feel compelled to fill every moment with sound. Their comfort with silence commands respect and attention. I've seen this principle transform even the most challenging situations. A salesperson learning to pause after stating the price, letting it sink in instead of rushing to justify it. A manager pausing after delivering feedback, creating space for real reflection. A negotiator using silence to let others sell themselves. Here's another powerful truth. Pauses give weight to your words. When you rush from one point to another, you signal that nothing is particularly important. When you pause strategically, you highlight what matters. You give your listeners time to absorb and appreciate your message. Let me share a practical tool, the pause portfolio. Develop different types of pauses for different situations. The reflective pause, looking up or away while considering something. The grounding pause, taking a deep breath before an important point. The power pause, holding steady eye contact in silence. But perhaps the most powerful aspect of the pause is what it communicates about your self-control. Someone who can sit comfortably in silence demonstrates mastery over themselves. They show. They're not driven by nervous energy or the need to prove themselves. They exhibit true confidence. I've taught this principle to thousands of professionals, and those who master it discover something remarkable. The less they say, the more impact their words have. The more comfortable they become with silence. The more others fill that silence with valuable information. Here's what separates master communicators from average ones. They understand that communication is not just about what you say. It's about the space you create for others to think, feel, and respond. The pause creates that space. Let me give you another technique, the escalating pause. The more important the point you're about to make, the longer you pause before making it. This creates natural emphasis and builds anticipation as we continue. This journey together, remember, the pause is not an absence of communication. It's a form of communication itself. It's a tool for emphasis, a space for reflection, and a demonstration of self-mastery. Are you ready to master the art of the pause? Are you prepared to discover how silence can be more powerful than words? The path to commanding presence begins with learning when not to speak. What if I told you that people are constantly telling you exactly what they're thinking and feeling without saying a word? The truth is, every person in every room is broadcasting their internal state through dozens of subtle signals. Once you learn to read these signals, you'll possess what seems like a superpower, the ability to read minds. Here's what most people don't understand. Human communication is like an iceberg. The words we speak are just the tip, the visible 10%. The other 90% lies beneath the surface in facial expressions, micro-gestures, body language, tone, and energy. Master communicators read the whole iceberg. Let me share something remarkable. Your brain is already wired to read these signals. You have mirror neurons that naturally pick up on others' emotional states. The key is learning to consciously notice what your unconscious mind already sees. It's about bringing this natural ability into awareness. Think about the last time you walked into a room and immediately sensed tension, even though everyone was smiling and speaking normally. That wasn't magic. It was your brain processing countless subtle signals that your conscious mind hadn't yet registered. I've developed what I call the 3 levels of room reading. Level 1 is surface reading, noticing obvious body language and tone. Level 2 is pattern reading, spotting inconsistencies between what's said and what's shown. Level 3 is energy reading, sensing the emotional undercurrent in the room. But here's where mastery comes in. Reading a room isn't just about collecting observations, it's about connecting dots. A crossed arm might mean defensiveness, or it might just mean someone's cold. A smile might indicate happiness, or it might mask discomfort. Context is everything. Let me share a technique I teach to executives and leaders, the baseline method. Before you try to read someone's signals, observe their baseline behavior. How do they act when they're relaxed? What's their normal speaking pace? What's their typical energy level? Changes from this baseline are what matter most. Here's what separates master communicators from average ones. They don't just notice signals. They notice clusters of signals. A single gesture might not mean much, but when you see 3 or 4 signals pointing to the same conclusion, you can be more confident in your reading. Remember this. People can control their words, but they struggle to control their micro-expressions. These fleeting facial movements, lasting less than a fifth of a second, often reveal true feelings before they're masked. Learn to watch for these brief windows of truth. I've seen this principle transform even the most challenging situations. A salesperson learns to spot buying signals that others miss. A manager notices team tension before it becomes conflict. A negotiator reads subtle signs of agreement or resistance that shape their strategy. Here's another powerful truth. Reading. A room isn't just about individuals, it's about dynamics. Watch how people interact. Who looks at whom when someone speaks? Who mirrors whose posture? Who influences the room's energy? These patterns reveal the invisible structure of power and influence. Let me give you a practical tool. The four-corner scan. When you enter a room, mentally divide it into quarters and spend 3 seconds scanning each quarter. Notice posture, grouping, energy, and attention patterns. This quick 12-second ritual will give you a baseline read of any room. But perhaps the most powerful aspect of room reading is what it allows you to do with the information. When you can read a room, you can lead a room. You can adjust your approach based on what you're sensing. You can address unspoken concerns before they become spoken objections. I've taught this skill to thousands of professionals, and those who master it report something remarkable. It's like suddenly having access to a new dimension of information. They start seeing the stories beneath the surface, the currents beneath the waves. Here's another technique, the contrast check. When you notice something significant, ask yourself, what was happening just before this changed? Often, the contrast between states reveals more than the states themselves. As we continue this journey together, remember, reading a room isn't about making assumptions, it's about gathering intelligence. It's not about jumping to conclusions, it's about collecting data points that inform your approach. Are you ready to develop what others will think is a sixth sense? Are you prepared to see what others miss and understand what others don't? The path to extraordinary influence begins with learning to read the unspoken language that fills every room. Let me share a truth that has transformed countless confrontations. Conflict is inevitable, but combat is optional. In every heated moment, in every tense exchange, you have a choice. You can engage in the conflict, or you can redirect its energy. Masters of communication choose redirection every time. Here's what most people don't understand. Conflict is like a river. Try to block it completely, and it builds up pressure until it breaks through. Try to swim against it, and you exhaust yourself. But learn to redirect its flow, and you can harness its energy for positive change. Think about the last time you found yourself in a heated disagreement. Did you try to fight the current? Did you attempt to prove the other person wrong? How did that work out? Most people's instinctive responses to conflict actually escalate it rather than resolve it. Let me introduce you to what I call the 3 pillars of conflict redirection: acknowledge, bridge, and channel. First, you acknowledge the other person's emotion without judgment. Then, you build a bridge of understanding. Finally, you channel the energy toward solution finding. But here's where mastery comes in. Redirection isn't about avoiding conflict. It's about transforming it. When someone comes at you with anger, they're actually giving you energy to work with. The key is learning to accept that energy and redirect it rather than resist it. I've watched countless confrontations transform through skilled redirection. Instead of meeting anger with anger, a skilled communicator says, "I can see this really matters to you. Help me understand why." Instead of defending against accusations, they ask, "What would need to change for this to work?" Here's a technique I teach to leaders and negotiators, the redirection triangle. When faced with conflict, move through 3 points. Validation. I understand why you feel this way. Alignment. We both want to resolve this. And progression. Let's look at how we can move forward. But here's what's crucial to understand. Redirection must be genuine. You can't fake empathy. You can't pretend to care. The key is finding something authentic in the other person's position that you can genuinely acknowledge and build upon. Remember this: Most conflict isn't about what people are saying, it's about what they're feeling. Address the feeling first, and the issue becomes much easier to resolve. Ignore the feeling, and no amount of logical argument will help. I've seen this principle transform even the most hostile situations. A customer service representative turns an angry complaint into a loyalty-building opportunity. A manager converts a confrontational employee into a collaborative problem solver. A negotiator shifts a deadlock into a breakthrough. Here's another powerful truth. The person who remains calm in conflict becomes the de facto leader of the interaction. When you maintain your composure while redirecting others' energy, you create a space where solutions can emerge. Let me share a practical tool, the Pause, Acknowledge, Direct (PAD) method. When someone comes at you with strong emotion, pause to create space. Acknowledge their feeling without judgment. Then direct the conversation toward problem solving. But perhaps the most powerful aspect of redirection is what it communicates about your leadership. When you can take someone's oppositional energy and channel it constructively, you demonstrate true mastery. You show that you're not just a participant in the conflict, you're a guide toward resolution. I've taught this principle to thousands of professionals, and those who master it discover something remarkable. Conflict becomes an opportunity rather than a threat. They learn to welcome challenging conversations because they know how to guide them toward positive outcomes. Here's what separates master communicators from average ones. They understand that every conflict contains the seeds of its own solution. The key is creating the conditions where those seeds can grow. Let me give you another technique, the energy conversion question. When someone expresses strong negative emotion, ask, "How would you like this to work?" This question converts complaint energy into solution energy. As we continue this journey together, remember, your goal in conflict isn't to win, it's to create positive change. It's not about defeating the other person, it's about defeating the problem together. Are you ready to master the art of conflict redirection? Are you prepared to transform confrontational energy into collaborative progress? The path to extraordinary leadership begins with learning to guide conflict towards constructive outcomes. Let me share with you one of the most powerful principles of influence I've ever discovered, the art of indirect suggestion. The most effective ideas are not those that are pushed into people's minds. They're the ones that people believe they've discovered for themselves. Here's what most people don't understand. The human mind naturally resists direct persuasion. Tell someone they should think differently, and you'll likely encounter resistance. But lead them to discover a new perspective on their own, and they'll not only accept it, they'll champion it. Think about the last time someone tried to convince you of something by telling you why you were wrong. Now think about a time when you came to an important realization on your own. Which had more impact? Which created lasting change in your thinking? I've developed what I call the 3 paths of suggestion: the story path, the question path, and the experience path. The story path plants ideas through relevant examples and analogies. The question path leads people to insights through strategic questioning. The experience path creates situations where people can discover truth for themselves. But here's where mastery comes in. Effective suggestion isn't about manipulation, it's about facilitation. You're not trying to trick people into thinking something. You're creating the conditions where they can discover valuable insights naturally. Let me share a technique I teach to leaders and influencers, the seed, water, grow method. First, you plant a seed of an idea through a subtle suggestion. Then, you water it with supporting evidence and examples. Finally, you give it space to grow by letting others develop and own the concept. Here's what separates master communicators from average ones. They understand that timing is everything. A suggestion that would be rejected today might be embraced tomorrow if the groundwork has been properly laid. They know how to prepare the soil before planting the seed. Remember this: the most powerful suggestions are often wrapped in questions. Instead of saying, "We should try this new approach," ask, What would happen if we looked at this differently? Let people discover the answer themselves, and they'll be far more committed to it. I've seen this principle transform even the most. Resistance situations. A manager wanting to implement change doesn't mandate it. They plant seeds that lead team members to suggest similar changes themselves. A parent hoping to influence their teenagers' decisions creates situations that lead to natural discovery. Here's another powerful truth: suggestions gain strength through multiple channels. When an idea comes at someone from different directions, a story here, a question there, an experience somewhere else, it creates a sense of natural convergence rather than forced persuasion. Let me give you a practical tool: the echo strategy. When you want to plant an idea, arrange for it to be echoed from multiple trusted sources. Each echo reinforces the original suggestion without feeling like deliberate repetition. But perhaps the most powerful aspect of suggestion is what it does to ownership. When people feel they've discovered an idea themselves, they become its strongest advocates. They don't just accept it, they promote it to others. I've taught this principle to thousands of professionals, and those who master it discover something remarkable. They can create change without resistance. They can lead without pushing. They can influence without friction. Here's another technique: the contrast framework. Before suggesting a new idea, help people see the limitations of current thinking. When they recognize existing gaps, they become more receptive to new perspectives. Remember this: the goal of suggestion isn't to control people's thoughts, it's to expand their thinking. It's not about limiting options, it's about illuminating possibilities they might not have considered. Let me share one more powerful tool: the future pace question. Ask people to imagine themselves having already implemented the suggestion. How would it feel if this was already working? This creates a mental bridge to acceptance. As we continue this journey together, remember, your power to influence through suggestion comes with great responsibility. Use it to help others discover genuine insights that serve their best interests. Use it to create positive change, not to manipulate. Are you ready to master the art of ethical suggestion? Are you prepared to help others discover powerful insights that can transform their lives? The path to extraordinary influence begins with learning to plant seeds that grow into forests of understanding. Let me share a truth that has transformed countless conversations. It's not what you say that matters. Most, it's how you frame it. The same situation presented in different frames can create completely different responses. Master communicators don't just deliver messages, they craft the frames through which others view reality. Here's what most people don't understand. Every situation, every problem, every opportunity comes with multiple possible frames. Think of frames like camera lenses. Each one shows the same reality from a different perspective. Your power lies in choosing which lens to use. Think about how differently people react to a challenge versus a problem, or an investment versus an expense. These aren't just different words. They're different frames that trigger different emotional and psychological responses. The frame you choose shapes how others think and feel about the situation. I've developed what I call the 5 master frames: opportunity frame, learning frame, solution frame, progress frame, and value frame. Each of these frames can transform how people perceive and respond to a situation. The key is knowing when and how to apply each one. But here's where mastery comes in. Reframing isn't about spinning or manipulating. It's about highlighting different aspects of truth. Every situation contains multiple truths. Your skill lies in bringing the most useful truth into focus. Let me share a technique I teach to leaders and negotiators: the Frame Bridge Enhance method. First, acknowledge the current frame without invalidating it. Then, build a bridge to a new frame. Finally, enhance the new perspective by highlighting its benefits and possibilities. Here's what separates master communicators from average ones. They understand that frames are contagious. When you consistently frame situations in empowering ways, Others begin to adopt your perspectives. You're not just changing conversations, you're changing thought patterns. Remember this, the most powerful frames are those that align with people's core values and aspirations. When you frame a situation in terms of what matters most to someone, you create natural engagement and motivation. I've seen this principle transform even the most challenging situations. A setback becomes a setup for comeback. A crisis becomes an opportunity for innovation. A conflict becomes a chance for deeper understanding. The situation hasn't changed, but the frame has changed everything. Here's another powerful truth. Frames determine focus, and focus determines results. When you frame a situation as a problem to be solved, people focus on problems. When you frame it as an opportunity to be seized, people focus on opportunities. Let me give you a practical tool. The contrast frame. Sometimes the best way to establish a new frame is to contrast it with less empowering alternatives. We could see this as a setback, or we could see this as feedback that will make us stronger. But perhaps the most powerful aspect of framing is what it does to emotional states. The right frame can transform anxiety into excitement, resistance into curiosity, and frustration into determination. The situation remains the same, but the experience of it changes completely. I've taught this principle to thousands of professionals, and those who master it discover something remarkable. They gain the ability to shift the emotional climate of any interaction. They become architects of perspective, engineers of understanding. Here's another technique, the future frame. When people are stuck in current difficulties, shift the frame to future possibilities. Looking back a year from now, what will we be glad we learned from this? Remember this, every frame suggests its own solutions. Frame a situation as a battle, and people look for weapons. Frame it as a puzzle, and they look for pieces. Frame it as an opportunity, and they look for possibilities. Let me share one more powerful tool, the value frame. Connect the situation to people's core values. This isn't just about quarterly numbers, it's about living up to our commitment to excellence. As we continue this journey together, remember, your power to frame situations comes with great responsibility. Use frames that empower, enlighten, and elevate. Use frames that bring out the best in people and situations. Are you ready to master the art of framing and reframing? Are you prepared to shape how others see reality in ways that serve their highest good? The path to extraordinary influence begins with learning to create frames that transform perspectives and possibilities. Let me share a paradox that has transformed countless communications. The less you say, the more impact your words can have. In a world drowning in words, brevity has become a superpower. But I'm not talking about just being brief. I'm talking about achieving maximum impact with minimum expression. Here's what most people don't understand. Verbal economy isn't about saying less. It's about delivering more value per word. Think of your words like currency. The goal isn't to spend less. It's to get more value from every unit you spend. Think about the last time someone truly captured your attention with their words. Were they rambling or were they precise? Did they flood you with information or did they deliver carefully chosen insights? The most powerful communicators aren't those who speak the most, they're those who waste the least. I've developed what I call the 3 laws of verbal economy: precision, purpose, and impact. Every word should be precise in its meaning, clear in its purpose, and designed for maximum impact. When you master these laws, your communication becomes not just efficient, but exponentially more effective. But here's where mastery comes in. Speaking less isn't about being terse or abrupt. It's about being intentional. It's about making every word earn its place in your message. It's about understanding that every unnecessary word dilutes the power of the necessary ones. Let me share a technique I teach to executives and leaders, the impact quotient. Before speaking, divide your intended impact by the number of words you plan to use. Then challenge yourself. Could you create the same impact with fewer words? Could you create more impact with the same words? Here's what separates master communicators from average ones. They understand that power comes from precision. They don't use four words when one will do. They don't circle around their point, they drive straight to it. They make every word count. Remember this: silence is the canvas on which you paint with words. The more empty canvas you leave, the more each stroke stands out. When you fill every space with words, you create noise. When you choose your words carefully, you create art. I've seen this principle transform even the most verbose communicators. They learn to replace lengthy explanations with powerful examples. They trade complicated arguments for simple truths. They discover that less really can be more, but only if the less is carefully chosen. Here's another powerful truth: brevity creates authority. When you can express in 10 words what others take 50 to say, you demonstrate mastery. You show that you understand your subject so well that you can distill it to its essence. Let me give you a practical tool: the 3-word challenge. Take any important message you need to convey. Force yourself to capture its essence in just 3 words. This exercise isn't about limiting your final communication. It's about finding its core. But perhaps the most powerful aspect of verbal economy is what it does to your thinking. When you challenge yourself to use fewer words, you're forced to think more clearly. You can't hide behind verbosity. You must understand your message deeply to express it simply. I've taught this principle to thousands of professionals, and those who master it discover something remarkable. Their words carry more weight. People lean in when they speak. Their messages stick in others' minds. Their influence grows even as their word count shrinks. Here's another technique: the power position. Put your most important word at the end of your sentence, where it can land with full force. Don't bury your impact in the middle of your message. Remember this: in a world of information overflow, clarity is kindness. When you speak with precision and purpose, you respect your listeners' time and attention. You make it easier for them to understand and act on your message. Let me share one more powerful tool: the clarity ratio. For every main point you make, allow only one supporting point. This forces you to choose your strongest evidence and eliminate everything else. As we continue this journey together, remember, your goal isn't to say less for the sake of brevity. Your goal is to achieve more with less, to make every word work harder, to create maximum impact with minimum interference. Are you ready to master the art of verbal economy? Are you prepared to discover how much more powerful your communication can become when you remove everything that doesn't serve? The path to extraordinary influence begins with learning to make every word count. Let me share a truth that has transformed countless relationships. Genuine connection isn't something that has to develop slowly over time. It can be created almost instantly when you understand the psychology of human bonding. This isn't about manipulation or fake charm. It's about accelerating the natural process of human connection. Here's what most people don't understand: deep connection happens when people feel seen, heard, and valued. These feelings don't require years of history. They require moments of genuine presence and understanding. Master communicators know how to create these moments intentionally. Think about the last time you felt instantly comfortable with someone you just met. What did they do differently? Chances are they unconsciously activated one or more of what I call the 5 bridges of rapid connection: shared values, common enemies, similar experiences, mutual aspirations, and vulnerable authenticity. Have developed what I call the connection framework: curiosity, openness, notice, normalize, empathize, communicate, truth, invite, observe, and navigate. Each element of this framework serves to deepen rapport and build trust rapidly. But here's where mastery comes in. Creating instant connection isn't about techniques or tricks. It's about authentic presence combined with strategic awareness. It's about knowing how to create the conditions where natural human bonding can accelerate. Let me share a technique I teach to leaders and relationship builders, the story bridge method. Share a brief, relevant story that reveals both vulnerability and strength. This creates a template for authentic sharing and invites others to lower their guards naturally. Here's what separates master communicators from average ones. They understand. That connection happens at the emotional level first, the intellectual level second. They know how to touch people's hearts before engaging their minds. Remember this, people don't connect with your status, achievements, or knowledge. They connect with your humanity. When you show your authentic self, including your imperfections, you create space for others to do the same. I've seen this principle transform even the most challenging relationships. Sales professionals turn cold calls into warm conversations. Leaders build trust with new teams in minutes rather than months. Strangers become allies through moments of genuine understanding. Here's another powerful truth. Connection deepens through shared experience, even if that experience is just a meaningful conversation. When you create moments of genuine discovery, together you build bonds that can last a lifetime. Let me give you a practical tool, the values conversation. Instead of starting with surface-level small talk, ask questions that reveal what matters most to people. What are you most passionate about? What change would you most like to see in the world? But perhaps the most powerful aspect of instant connection is what it does to the energy between people. When genuine connection occurs, resistance melts away, collaboration becomes natural, trust builds rapidly. I've taught this principle to thousands of professionals, and those who master it discover something remarkable. Doors that once took months to open start opening instantly. Relationships that once took years to build start forming in moments. Here's another technique, the common enemy bond. When you identify and articulate a challenge or frustration that you both face, you create instant alignment. Isn't it frustrating? When can be the beginning of a powerful connection. Remember this, people are longing for genuine connection in a world of superficial interactions. When you offer the opportunity for real understanding and authentic exchange, you stand out dramatically. Let me share one more powerful tool, the vulnerability loop. Share something mildly vulnerable about yourself, then create space for them to share something in return. This reciprocal sharing builds trust rapidly, but here's what's crucial to understand. Rapid connection must be genuine to be sustainable. You're not trying to fake intimacy. You're creating conditions where real understanding can develop more quickly. As we continue this journey together, remember, your ability to create instant connection isn't about being charismatic or outgoing. It's about being genuinely interested in others and skillfully creating spaces where authentic connection can occur. Think about how different your life could be if you could create meaningful connections in minutes rather than months. Think about the opportunities that would open up if you could build trust rapidly and authentically. Are you ready to master the art of instant connection? Are you prepared to discover how quickly you can build genuine, meaningful relationships? The path to extraordinary influence begins with learning to create authentic connections in moments rather than months. Let me share a paradox that has transformed countless negotiations and relationships. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is nothing at all. In a world where everyone is fighting to be heard, strategic silence has become one of the most potent tools of influence. Here's what most people don't understand. Silence isn't empty. It's full of information. When you learn to use silence strategically, you discover it's not just an absence of sound. It's a presence of power. It's not a void. It's a tool. Think about the last time you were in a high-stakes negotiation or an emotional conversation. How comfortable were you with silence? Did you rush to fill every gap? Did you miss opportunities because you couldn't bear the weight of a quiet moment? I've developed what I call the 5 strategic silences. The thinking silence, the power silence, the empathy silence, the tension silence, and the decision silence. Each type of silence serves a specific purpose and it creates a specific effect when used skillfully. But here's where mastery comes in. Strategic silence isn't about being unresponsive or aloof. It's about creating space for thoughts to emerge, emotions to settle, and insights to surface. It's about knowing when words would only get in the way. Let me share a technique I teach to negotiators and leaders. The silent sandwich. Make your point clearly, then fall silent. Let that silence do the heavy lifting. Then, when you finally speak again, address what emerged during the silence rather than what came before it. Here's what separates master communicators from average ones. They understand that silence can communicate more powerfully than words. They know when to let silence carry their message, and when silence itself is the message. Remember this: in moments of high emotion or crucial decisions, silence creates space for wisdom to emerge. When others are caught in reaction, your silence can be the gravity that pulls them back to reason. I've seen this principle transform even the most challenging situations. A crucial negotiation shifts when someone has the courage to let silence work. A heated argument diffuses when someone creates space instead of adding fuel. A difficult decision clarifies in the space of shared silence. Here's another powerful truth. Silence builds tension, and tension creates movement. When you're comfortable holding silence longer than others, you gain a powerful advantage. People will often give away their position simply because they can't bear the weight of silence. Let me give you a practical tool, the 3-beat silence. After making an important point or asking a crucial question, count 3 slow beats in your head before speaking again. This simple practice can transform the dynamics of any conversation, but perhaps the most powerful aspect of strategic silence is what it communicates about your self-control. Someone who can sit comfortably in silence demonstrates a level of mastery that commands respect. They show they're not driven by nervous energy or the need to fill space. I've taught this principle to thousands of professionals, and those who master it discover something remarkable. Their words carry more weight because they use them more sparingly. Their presence becomes more powerful because it's not diluted by constant noise. Here's another technique, the silence mirror. When someone shares something significant, mirror their emotion with your silence. Let your quiet attention validate the importance of what they've shared. Remember this: silence isn't just about not speaking, it's about creating space for something important to happen. It's about trusting that sometimes the most powerful response is no response at all. Let me share one more powerful tool, the power pause. When you're about to respond emotionally or reactively, force yourself to pause for 10 seconds in that silence. You often find a better response or discover that no response is needed. As we continue this journey together, remember, your silence is a form of communication. It can express confidence, create tension, show respect, or demonstrate wisdom. The key is learning when and how to use it strategically. Think about how different your conversations could be if you were completely comfortable with silence. Think about how much more influence you could have if you knew exactly when to let silence do your work for you. Are you ready to master the art of strategic silence? Are you prepared to discover how powerful you can be when you know when not to speak? The path to extraordinary influence begins with learning to use silence as skillfully as you use words. Let me share a truth that has transformed countless careers. You don't need a title to have influence. In fact, some of the most powerful people in any organization aren't those with official authority. They're those who've mastered the art of influence without position power. Here's what most people don't understand. True influence doesn't flow from titles or organizational charts. It flows from trust, value, and strategic positioning. When you understand this, you can lead from any position in the organization, with or without formal authority. Think about the most influential person in your workplace. Are they necessarily the highest ranking? Or are they the person who knows how to make things happen who others naturally turn to, who can shape decisions without forcing them. I've developed what I call the 5 pillars of informal influence: value creation, network building, trust development, strategic positioning, and social capital. Master these pillars, and you can influence outcomes regardless of your formal position. But here's where mastery comes in. Influence without authority isn't about manipulation or going around proper channels. It's about becoming so valuable and trusted that your influence becomes a natural extension of your presence. Let me share a technique I teach to professionals at all levels: the value-first strategy. Before attempting to influence any situation, first ensure you're consistently delivering value that others can't easily replace. This creates natural leverage without requiring formal power. Here's what separates master influencers from average ones. They understand that influence is earned, not taken. They focus on building the foundations of influence: expertise, relationships, trust, rather than trying to force outcomes through position or pressure. Remember this: in any organization, there are 2 hierarchies: the formal one shown on charts and the informal one based on influence. Smart professionals learn to navigate both, but the informal one often matters more. I've seen this principle transform even the most challenging situations. Entry-level employees shape company policy. Team members influence their boss's decisions. Individual contributors affect organizational strategy, all without formal authority. Here's another powerful truth: influence grows through strategic generosity. When you consistently help others achieve their goals, they naturally want to help you achieve yours. This creates a network of reciprocal influence that's more powerful than any formal authority. Let me give you a practical tool: the influence map. Draw a map of the key decision makers and influencers in your organization. Then identify how you can add value to each one. This strategic approach to relationship building creates natural pathways of influence. But perhaps the most powerful aspect of informal influence is what it does to your mindset. When you stop relying on position power, you develop more sophisticated and sustainable ways to create change. You become more strategic, more collaborative, more effective. I've taught this principle to thousands of professionals, and those who master it discover something remarkable. They can get more done without authority than others can get done with it. They learn to lead through influence rather than control. Here's another technique: the trust triangle. Build trust through 3 key elements: competence, delivering excellence; reliability, keeping commitments; and authenticity, being genuinely yourself. When these 3 align, your influence grows naturally. Remember this: people follow formal authority because they have to, but they follow informal influence because they want to. Which do you think is more powerful? Let me share one more powerful tool: the solution focus. Instead of pointing out problems, which anyone can do, always come prepared with potential solutions. This positions you as a problem solver rather than a complainer, building your influence naturally. As we continue this journey together, remember, your influence isn't determined by your position. It's determined by your impact. It's not about what you can control. It's about what you can influence through trust, value, and strategic relationships. Think about how different your career could be if you could influence decisions regardless of your position. Think about how much more impact you could have if you mastered the art of informal leadership. But here's what's crucial to understand: influence without authority requires patience. You're building a foundation of trust and value that will support long-term influence, not seeking quick wins through force or position. Are you ready to master the art of influence without authority? Are you prepared to discover how powerful you can be regardless of your title or position? The path to extraordinary impact begins with learning to lead through influence rather than control. Let me share a truth that has transformed countless interactions. The end of a conversation is not just its conclusion, it's its crown. How you close a conversation often determines how the entire interaction will be remembered and what actions will follow. Here's what most people don't understand. Endings aren't just about wrapping things up. They're about sealing impressions and catalyzing action. The most brilliant conversation can be undermined by a weak ending, while a strong close can elevate an entire interaction. Think about the last important conversation you had. How did it end? Was there clear direction, strong commitment, a sense of momentum, or did it just fade away, leaving uncertainty and missed opportunities in its wake? I've developed what I call the 5 elements of power closing: summary, agreement, commitment, timeline, and next steps. When you master these elements, you transform vague discussions into catalysts for action. But here's where mastery comes. In closing isn't about rushing to wrap things up. It's about orchestrating a purposeful conclusion that serves your objectives. It's about ensuring that your investment in the conversation yields real returns. Let me share a technique I teach to executives and leaders: the bookmark close. Before ending any important conversation, create a clear mental bookmark, a shared understanding of what was decided, what will happen next, and who will do what by when. Here's what separates master communicators from average ones. They understand that the last moments of a conversation have disproportionate impact on how it's remembered and acted upon. They close with intention, not by accident. Remember this: people rarely act on conversations that end ambiguously. Clear, strong closings create clear, strong commitments. Vague endings lead to vague results. I've seen this principle transform even the most challenging situations. Sales conversations that were going nowhere suddenly gain momentum with a strong close. Team meetings that used to evaporate now crystallize into action. Negotiations that were drifting find clear resolution. Here's another powerful truth: the energy of your closing sets the tone for what follows. End with clarity and confidence, and you create momentum. End with uncertainty or weakness, and you invite inaction. Let me give you a practical tool: the 3-part close. Summarize key points, confirm commitments, and clarify immediate next steps. This simple framework ensures nothing important is left hanging, but perhaps the most powerful aspect of strong closing is what it does to relationships. When you consistently end conversations with clarity and purpose, you build a reputation as someone who makes things happen. You become known as a closer, not just a talker. I've taught this principle to thousands of professionals, and those who master it discover something remarkable. Their conversations start producing real results. Their words begin translating into actions. Their influence expands because they know how to turn dialogue into outcomes. Here's another technique: the future frame close. End by painting a clear picture of what success looks like after the agreed actions are taken. This creates motivation and clarity that extend beyond the conversation. Remember this: every conversation is an investment of time and energy. Your closing determines the return on that investment. Strong closings multiply the value of every minute you've spent. Let me share one more powerful tool: the commitment cascade. Start with small, easy commitments and build to larger ones. Each yes creates momentum for the next one, leading to stronger overall commitment. As we continue this journey together, remember, your ability to close conversations effectively is directly linked to your ability to create real-world results. It's not about being pushy or aggressive. It's about being clear and purposeful. Think about how different your results could be if every important conversation ended with crystal clarity about what happens next. Think about how much more you could accomplish if your words consistently translated into action. But here's what's crucial to understand. Strong closing isn't about dominating or controlling. It's about serving. It's about ensuring that the value created in the conversation actually manifests in the real world. Are you ready to master the art of powerful closing? Are you prepared to discover how much more impact you can have when you know how to end conversations with strength and purpose? The path to extraordinary results begins with learning to close with power and precision. Let me share the ultimate truth about communication mastery. It's not just about what you do, it's about who you become. The most powerful communicators aren't just skilled practitioners of techniques. They're living embodiments of the principles we've explored together. Here's what most people don't understand. Becoming someone everyone wants to talk to isn't about being the most charming, the most knowledgeable, or the most powerful. It's about being the most present, the most genuine, and the most valuable presence in any conversation. Think about the people you most enjoy talking to. What makes them different? Chances are they make you feel heard, understood, and valued. They create spaces where insights emerge and possibilities open up. This isn't accidental. It's the result of conscious development. I've developed what I call the 7 qualities of magnetic communicators: presence, insight, value, openness, trust, authenticity, and leadership. When you develop these qualities, you don't just practice good communication, you become a powerful communicator. But here's where mastery comes in. This transformation isn't about adding a layer of techniques to who you are. It's about developing yourself so thoroughly that powerful communication becomes your natural state. Let me share a framework I teach to leaders and influencers, the identity pyramid. At the base are skills and techniques. Above that are habits and practices. At the top is identity, who you actually become. True mastery happens when all 3 levels align. Here's what separates master communicators from average ones. They understand that lasting influence comes from genuine development, not clever manipulation. They focus on becoming people worth listening to, not just learning techniques for being heard. Remember this: people can sense the difference between someone who's using communication techniques and someone who's developed into a genuine master communicator. The first might win moments, but the second transforms every interaction they touch. I've seen this principle transform even the most challenging personalities. Introverts discover their natural power to influence. Aggressive communicators learn the strength of subtlety. Technical experts find their voice in human connection. Here's another powerful truth. When you become someone worth talking to, you never have to fight for attention. People seek you out. They value your perspective. They want to be in conversation with you. Let me give you a practical tool: the daily development practice. Each day, focus on embodying one quality of magnetic communicators. Today might be about presence, tomorrow about insight, the next day about value creation. But perhaps the most powerful aspect of this transformation is what it does to your life beyond communication. When you develop these qualities deeply, you don't just become a better communicator, you become a better leader, partner, friend, and human being. I've taught these principles to thousands of professionals, and those who master them discover something remarkable. Their entire world begins to shift. Opportunities open up, relationships deepen, influence expands naturally. Here's another technique: the legacy question. Ask yourself regularly, what impact do I want my communications to have on others? This focuses you on becoming someone who creates value in every interaction. Remember this: the ultimate goal isn't to master communication techniques, it's to become someone whose very presence improves the quality of every conversation they're part of. Let me share one more powerful tool: the integrity check. Regularly ask yourself, am I communicating this way because it's effective, or because it's who I've truly become? This keeps you focused on genuine development rather than mere technique. As we conclude this journey together, remember, your greatest power as a communicator comes not from what you do, but from who you are. Every principle we've explored, every technique we've discussed, is really about becoming someone who naturally creates value through communication. Think about how different your life could be if you weren't just practicing communication skills, but had developed into someone who naturally attracts meaningful conversations and creates valuable outcomes. But here's what's crucial to understand. This transformation doesn't happen overnight. It's a journey of consistent growth, conscious practice, and genuine development. Every interaction is an opportunity to grow, every conversation a chance to evolve. Are you ready to begin this journey of transformation? Are you prepared to develop not just your communication skills, but your very identity as a communicator? The path to extraordinary impact begins with becoming someone worth talking to. The principles and techniques we've explored are powerful, but they're just the beginning. Your journey continues with every conversation, every interaction, every opportunity to create value through communication. Make each moment count.